Welcome to you, the chosen one who answered this call. When you play chess with a divine piece disguised as a pawn, don't be surprised if the board flips over by itself. Let me repeat that for those in the back who thought they were clever. You don't win a spiritual game by cheating against someone who was sent as your final test. Here's the thing. Most manipulators never do the math. Some souls enter your life not to be used but to be evaluated. And when they fail that evaluation, the universe doesn't just walk away. It restructures their entire reality. Let me hit you with a fact. According to behavioral psychology, chronic manipulators often believe they are invincible until the illusion of control backfires and triggers what's known as a narcissistic collapse. But here's the flip side nobody talks about. When you manipulate a chosen one, it's not just your ego that collapses, it's the entire infrastructure of your life. And right now, someone who thought they could play God in your life is realizing they aren't even qualified to be an extra in your destiny. They tried to dismantle your peace, tarnish your name, and destabilize your mind. But the game they started has now taken on a life of its own, and the endings they are experiencing are not symbolic. They are eviction notices from the spiritual realm. And if you're wondering if they're okay, well, let's just say this. They no longer sleep, can't think clearly, and suddenly believe Mercury has been in retrograde since the day they met you. Spoiler alert, it's not astrology, it's accountability. So fasten your seatbelt, because in this video, we're diving deep into karmic chaos, divine justice, and the stunning reversal that happens when someone plays a very dangerous game with a chosen one and loses everything. Let's begin. Number 1. They bet with your soul and now they're paying with their own. They thought manipulating you was harmless. A little lie here, some emotional bait there. Pushing you, pulling you, unsettling you, then laughing when you questioned yourself. But what they didn't understand is this. By targeting you, they weren't just playing with another person. They were betting with something sacred. You weren't just a human they could play with. You were a soul on a mission, carrying protection, a purpose, and a power that went far beyond what their limited eyes could see. What they triggered wasn't a simple misunderstanding, it was spiritual sabotage. And the price for that, they could neither foresee, nor control, nor escape. Because once they crossed that line, they activated something they were not prepared for. Spiritual law, not human law, not karma disguised as a pretty quote, but divine law, the one that recalibrates reality when injustice has been tolerated for too long, the one that doesn't just give a slap on the wrist, but closes doors, strips away illusions, and destroys everything built on manipulation. Now, they are chaining loss after loss, and they can't connect the dots. But the truth is simple. They weren't punished for hurting you. They were held accountable for misusing sacred energy. You were sent into their life not as a pawn, but as a test, a mirror, a lifeline. But they treated your soul like a playground, and now the game is over. The stakes were always higher than they thought. They didn't just hurt you. They violated divine order, and in that moment, they sealed their own fate. They thought you were just a sensitive person, too kind, too forgiving, but they didn't see the power standing behind your spirit. They didn't realize that hurting you carried cosmic consequences, and now, those consequences are unfolding faster than they can explain. The endings appearing in their life are not coincidences. They aren't just bad days or unlucky moments, they are spiritual verdicts. The game they started is now beyond their control, and the very energy they used to try and trap you is now the one turning their world upside down. Not because you cursed them, but because divine protection doesn't play around when it comes to the chosen ones. It plays for keeps. Number 2. They didn't know you were protected by divine claws. They thought you were just another person they could manipulate, someone they could charm, manipulate, or trample without consequence. What they didn't realize is that your life is protected by a divine clause. an invisible agreement written even before they met you. You came into this world with a spiritual covering they could neither see nor understand. There are boundaries around your life that no one is permitted to cross without serious consequences, and they had no idea they were stepping into territory where grace has its limits. They thought they were dealing with someone weak, naive. But what they really did was trigger a divine response system that never sleeps. You may not have retaliated as they expected. You may not have exposed them, argued, or attacked them. But that silence wasn't empty. It was sacred. Because when a chosen one holds back, heaven takes notice. And when heaven responds, it doesn't do so halfway. It dismantles everything false. It cuts the root, not just the fruit. They broke the invisible code without even knowing it. They disrespected someone who was sent as a blessing. And now they're waking up to a series of losses that seem like coincidences but are actually corrections. Career opportunities that vanish, relationships that suddenly collapse, a peace that never returns. This isn't bad luck. It's the divine claws catching up with them. The crazy part is, they had a chance. If they had honored you, supported you, or even just left you alone, things could have been different. But their ego couldn't resist testing you. And now that same ego, which made them feel powerful in the moment, is dragging them through public and private chaos. The protection around your life isn't gentle when someone crosses the line. It's surgical. They didn't just play with you, they violated a spiritual contract. They interfered with a chosen life path, and that kind of mistake always has a price. The danger wasn't in who you appeared to be. It was in who you truly are, a covered, chosen, and protected soul. They didn't read the divine clause, but now they're paying for every word written in it. Number 3, the mask they wore to deceive you has stuck to their face. They wore a mask so well that even you doubted your instincts. They pretended to care for you, to support you, to understand you, while in reality, every move was calculated. Every word was designed to twist your perception and manipulate your emotions. It was a performance, and for a while, they got away with it. They played the role of the victim, the ally, the lover, the faithful friend, anything that allowed them to get closer to your light. But the truth about masks is that the longer you wear one, the harder it is to remove. And now, that mask has stuck to their face. They have lied so much that the lies have become their personality. They have manipulated for so long that they no longer know how to connect with anyone honestly. Their identity is now trapped in the illusion they used to catch you. They are no longer pretending. They have become the false character they created. And the scariest part is that this character is now turning against them. When someone wears a false face for too long, they start to lose touch with their true self. Their soul gets buried under layers of manipulation, pride, and fear. And eventually, the mask no longer just hides their truth. It starts to destroy everything behind it. This is where they are now. They no longer know who they are without the performance. They can't be real because truth requires vulnerability, and they burned that bridge with everyone they used. The charm they used no longer works. The false concern they used to gain sympathy is now seen as manipulation by the very people they once deceived. They are losing their credibility. Their reputation is quietly crumbling. People are pulling away not because of drama, but because of a sense of unease. Because the energy around them feels forced, artificial, and unstable. The mask gave them power for a moment, but now it has become their prison. They can't remove it without exposing everything they did to keep it on. And here's the reversal. They thought you would be the one to collapse. But you healed, you evolved, you saw clearly while they remained stuck, frozen in the identity they manufactured to control others. They thought they had outsmarted you. Instead, they outsmarted themselves. Now they can't fool anyone, not even their own reflection. Number 4, they mocked your pain. Now they suffer without witnesses. They mocked you when you were at your lowest. They joked about your breakdowns as if it were entertainment. They laughed behind closed doors, threw jabs in public, and made your suffering the punchline of their private conversations. For them, your pain was a weakness, and your silence was a weapon. They thought your silent suffering meant they were winning. They never imagined that this silence was a sacred space where your healing was unfolding and their karma was being written. They felt powerful mocking you, especially because they had an audience. The gossip gave them status. Your name gave them relevance. But now the crowd is gone. The spotlights are off, and the stage they built on your misfortune is completely empty. What they didn't foresee is the loneliness that follows when you become known for laughing at people instead of lifting them up. Now, they suffer in private. And it's not the kind of pain that attracts sympathy. It's not something they can share with others. This pain is silent, suffocating, laced with the shame that hits when you realize you were totally wrong. They can't post their grief. They can't tweet their regrets, because admitting what they're going through would mean confessing what they did to you. They are stuck in an emotional cell, and the walls are closing in. No one is applauding them anymore. No one is listening. The same people who laughed with them are now wary, distant, or completely gone. And now they realize something brutal. They turned your suffering into a spectacle, and now life has turned theirs into a silent film with no audience, no applause, and no way out. What breaks them isn't just the pain, it's the silence they once mocked. They are finally tasting its flavor, but instead of healing from within like you did, they are collapsing. They have no anchor, no grace, no light, because when you use someone else's suffering to feed your ego, life ultimately takes you to a place where your ego can't help you. They watched you crawl and laughed. Now, they are falling with no one watching and no one caring enough to catch them. Number 5. Their entire life is becoming a scene of spiritual contamination. Everything they once controlled is starting to slip away. The spaces they used to dominate, deceive, and manipulate are closing in on them. Their homes feel heavy. Their relationships are filled with distrust and tension. Their workplace is uncomfortable, full of misunderstandings, betrayal, and an energy they can't dissipate. What's happening isn't random. It's spiritual contamination. They spent so much time creating environments where they could stay in power, where they could twist the truth, control the narratives, and sow seeds of confusion. But what they didn't realize is that energy doesn't just stay directed at others. It saturates the space from which it was sent. And now the poison they aimed at you is seeping into every corner of their own life. They created spaces to mock you, isolate you, or turn others against you. But now those same places are collapsing. The conversations around them feel awkward and hollow. The people they convinced so easily are starting to see through their game. It's as if a fog is lifting, but only for others. They continue to operate with a script that no longer works. They can't rest at home. The atmosphere is oppressive, their sleep is disturbed. The walls that once brought them comfort now echo with every lie they told. Their relationships are fraying too, because control is a poor substitute for connection. And when manipulation is the foundation, collapse is guaranteed. Even at work or in public, they carry something heavy. People may not know the whole story, but they sense the change. The charm is gone. Their words no longer have the same impact. The armor they wore is starting to feel like desperation. This is because the energy they sent into the world is now folding back onto itself, and nothing they built is immune to it. The trap they set for you has transformed into a cage around them. They thought they could control outcomes by creating toxic spaces, but energy doesn't take sides. It follows the source, and since they were the source of this darkness, that same energy is now dismantling everything they've touched, quietly, precisely, brutally. Number 6. They thought breaking you was a game. Now their mind is the battlefield. They thought they could break you and walk away unscathed. They thought the lies, manipulation, and emotional sabotage would shatter you and reinforce their feelings of control. They played psychological games as if it were a pastime, testing your limits, observing your reactions, feeding on your confusion. For them, it was all a twisted strategy to win a game you didn't even know existed. But they never wondered what would happen if the game turned against them. Now their own mind has become hostile territory. The peace they simulated is gone. The confidence they pretended to have is fraying. They are jumpy, anxious, questioning everything and everyone, including themselves. They are haunted not only by guilt, but by fear. The fear that the truth will come out. The fear that karma is watching. The fear that what they did to you will come back in a form they can't anticipate. The silence they used to control you has backfired. It's too loud now. They can't escape their own thoughts. They can't sleep without tension. They replay conversations that never happened. They try to predict outcomes they can't control. They obsess over people who no longer trust them. They overanalyze every look, every word, every pause in a text message. It's the kind of mental chaos that doesn't announce itself with fireworks, but slowly eats away at stability. And the worst part is, they can't ask for help, because that would mean telling the truth. They would have to admit what they did, how calculated it was, and who they truly are beneath the charm. But their pride won't let them. So instead, they keep pretending, smiling on the outside, spiraling on the inside. They had a playbook: control the narrative, stay 10 steps ahead, unsettle others. But now, they are the ones who are unsettled. And the war they launched to destroy your peace has turned into a mental war zone they can't escape. There's no more strategy, no move left to play, no inner army to fight with, because the game is over and they got lost in the process. Number 7. Their karma didn't just knock. It kicked down the door. Karma didn't show up politely. It didn't whisper. It didn't warn. It burst in as if it had waited too long to collect the debt. This isn't the kind of karma people talk about online with soft quotes and soothing music. This is the kind that rearranges lives without notice. It arrives uninvited, flips their reality upside down, and dares them to explain it. And honestly, they can't. They thought what they did to you would stay buried, that no one had seen it, that no one cared. But the universe was watching, and it doesn't forget. It doesn't just track what was done. It tracks why it was done. The smug smiles, the arrogance, the pleasure they took in your suffering. It remembers their smugness, their feelings of power, the way they thought they were untouchable. And it's that part that activated this level of intensity. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the pride they displayed while committing it. Now they are facing backlash they never anticipated. Opportunities vanish, people drift away. What they relied on, money, reputation, support systems, is collapsing all at once. Nothing holds, nothing feels solid, and it's happening too fast for them to handle. Because this karma doesn't progress in steps. It arrives in waves, heavy, relentless, humbling. Every lie they told, every seed of doubt they planted, every fake smile they flashed while stabbing you in the back. It's all coming back. Not metaphorically. Literally, people are seeing it, exposing it, leaving them with nowhere to hide. This isn't a punishment. It's a correction, a complete reset designed not only to humble them, but to remind every part of their mind that divine order cannot be mocked. And here's the twist. They didn't expect consequences to have teeth. They expected a delay, maybe a little guilt or mild backlash. But what they're facing now isn't emotional discomfort. It's spiritual demolition. The door they slammed in your face has been ripped off its hinges, and now karma is marching through every room of their life, overturning tables and producing the receipts. This is what happens when you play dirty and think the universe is asleep. It isn't sleeping. It's just patient, but when it moves without mercy. Number 8. They used you as a shield. Now they are exposed on all fronts. They weren't drawn to you just for who you were. They were drawn to the protection, the light, the peace that surrounded you. They saw your energy as a safe place to hide their own darkness. Being near you gave them access to a favor they hadn't earned, an attention they didn't deserve, and a grace they had no intention of honoring. You became their spiritual cover, a shield against judgment, suspicion, or even consequences. They thought that by staying close to you, they could keep their true nature hidden, and for a while it worked. People assumed the best about them simply because you were by their side. Your goodness rubbed off on them. Your discernment, your patience, your credibility gave them a free pass they never earned. But they weren't trying to grow. They weren't trying to change. They were just trying to blend in. They used your light as a mask, hoping no one would look further. But energy doesn't blend forever, and God doesn't let His chosen ones be used as hiding places for long. The moment you withdrew, detached, disconnected, or finally said enough, that cover was lifted, and what remains is raw exposure. The people who once gave them the benefit of the doubt are starting to question everything. Inconsistencies are becoming visible. The charm doesn't work the same way anymore, and without your light to soften their presence, the energy they carry is sharp, strange, and uncomfortable. Now they are panicking. They are trying to recreate what they had with you, looking for someone else to mask their dysfunction. But it doesn't work, because truth has a way of rising when the cover is gone. And now the dirt they buried under your grace is overflowing. They can no longer hide behind your kindness. They can no longer use your silence as a shield. They are exposed on all fronts, emotionally, socially, spiritually. People are noticing. Opportunities are drying up. Connections are fading. They are now carrying the full weight of their own energy. And it's not pretty, it's not impressive, it's not divine. The very protection they abused has become the judgment they now face. You were never their shield. You were their warning. They just didn't listen. And now no one is coming to their rescue. Number 9. They lied about you so well they started to believe it until reality shattered their illusion. They told the story so many times that they began to believe it themselves. They painted you as the problem, the unstable one, the disloyal one. They repeated the lies in their head until they could recite them without blinking. They presented themselves as the victim so convincingly that people started taking their side. Friends, family, even strangers. Some believed the storyline because it seemed smooth and emotional. And the worst part is they thought they had gotten away with it. They thought controlling the narrative meant controlling the truth. They confused being believed with being right. But truth doesn't depend on popularity. It isn't loud, it isn't flashy, but it is constant. It waits quietly. And now, one by one, the lies they built are crumbling. The story no longer holds up. The timelines don't match, the facts contradict their claims, and people are starting to notice the cracks. Reality is doing what you didn't have to do. It's revealing everything they tried to bury, not through arguments or drama, but through consequences. The people they manipulated are now comparing notes. The masks they wore are slipping. The inconsistencies are louder than the gossip ever was. And it's not just about losing favor, it's a total collapse of credibility. They thought lying about you would elevate them. They thought bringing you down would make them appear strong, wise, or misunderstood. But now that the illusion is breaking, they realize something painful. If their character had to be destroyed for theirs to make sense, then theirs was never real to begin with. And the fallout is brutal. The relationships they use to manipulate others are collapsing. People are pulling away not out of loyalty to you, but out of discomfort with them. Because the same false narrative that once convinced others is now making everyone wary. If they could lie so well about you, who else have they lied about or falsified? They turned lies into weapons until the weapon backfired. And now the truth isn't just catching up. It's overtaking them slowly, publicly, relentlessly. They believed their own lies, but reality never did. And now it's showing up to clear your name without you having to say a word. Number 10. They became addicted to manipulating you and lost control of their own life. At first, it was a game for them. Subtle manipulations, emotional withholding, mixed signals. They loved seeing how you reacted. It gave them a thrill. Every time you questioned yourself, over-explained, or tried to win their approval, it gave them a false sense of power. They weren't just trying to hurt you. They were trying to feel important, and your reactions became their drug. They fed on control. They learned which buttons to push, which words to say, when to be cold, when to reel you back in. It was an unhealthy cycle, and they thought they were the masters of it. But what they didn't realize is that they were the ones becoming addicted. Slowly, your emotional responses became their only source of validation. They didn't want love, respect, or peace. They wanted control, and once they had it, they always wanted more to feel relevant. They built their entire identity around being the one who could shake you. And every time you reacted, they felt bigger, stronger, smarter. But beneath it all was a deep insecurity, because people who feel truly powerful don't need to destroy someone else to feel whole. Now that you've disconnected, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, they are in free fall. The same tactics no longer work. The games fall flat. The silence they once used to punish you now swallows them. And what's scary for them is that nothing else fills that void. Not attention from others, not new relationships, not false confidence, because what they were feeding on was your energy, and it never belonged to them. Without your presence, their full source of power has been cut off, and now their life feels chaotic, messy, boring, out of control. They felt in command when they could provoke you. But now, they are left with their own emptiness. And it's loud. They didn't realize how dependent they were on your energy until it was gone. Now their days feel meaningless. Their interactions feel shallow. And the obsession they had with controlling you has turned into a gnawing addiction they can't satisfy. They thought they owned you, but in reality, they lost themselves trying to control someone who was never meant to be theirs. Number 11. They made you out to be their enemy, but you were their final test. They didn't just misjudge you, they completely misinterpreted your presence in their life. You weren't sent to harm them, compete with them, or challenge them for dominance. You were a divine checkpoint, a spiritual test, a moment in their timeline where they had the chance to grow or collapse. But because they were too immersed in their ego, too obsessed with control, and too triggered by your light, they saw you as a threat instead of a teacher. Instead of aligning with you, they attacked you. Instead of learning from your example, they tried to break your spirit. They made you out to be their enemy, not because you had done anything wrong, but because you revealed something uncomfortable in them. Your self-awareness exposed their emotional immaturity. Your strength reminded them of everything they had suppressed. Your peace irritated the parts of them still at war, and rather than sitting with that discomfort and evolving, they chose sabotage. They had the chance to level up, confront their wounds, and heal through connection. But their pride was louder than their inner voice. Their need to feel powerful was stronger than their conscience. So they crossed a line that should never have been crossed. And what they didn't understand is that when you fail a spiritual test with malice, you don't just miss an opportunity. You trigger a chain reaction of consequences. Now they are facing the fallout. They feel stuck, stagnant, surrounded by the same cycles they thought they controlled. The same tricks no longer work. The same manipulation doesn't land. The doors that once opened now stay shut. This isn't random. It's a spiritual lockout. You were their mirror, and instead of facing the reflection, they tried to shatter it. Now that reflection follows them everywhere. In relationships, in jobs, in moments of silence they can't escape. The lesson they refuse to learn from you is now repeating itself through loss, loneliness, and breakdowns. What could have been their evolution became their downfall. And the most brutal part is that it didn't have to be this way. You weren't their enemy. You were their opportunity. But they mistook your light for a challenge. And now all they have left is the darkness they created for themselves. Number 12. They underestimated the cost of misusing sacred energy. They didn't just misuse your energy. They tried to steal it. They thought they could tap into your light without honoring its source. They saw your kindness as something to manipulate, your peace as something to hijack, and your empathy as a tool they could twist to their advantage. What they didn't realize is that your energy wasn't ordinary. It was sacred. It was designed with divine intention, wrapped in spiritual laws, and protected by forces they can't even name. You weren't just a kind person. You walked with something holy. Your presence brought clarity. Your words brought healing, and your silence carried weight. But instead of treating that with reverence, they tried to use it as leverage. They wanted the benefits of being near you without the responsibility of respecting you. They wanted your radiance but not your boundaries. They wanted to drain you without giving anything back. That was their first mistake, because spiritual energy isn't free for the taking. It's a currency, and like any system of value, it tracks who takes what and why. What they did to you wasn't just emotional manipulation, it was spiritual fraud. They forged a connection. They forged vulnerability. They pretended to give while talking. And in the invisible realm, it was all recorded, not by people, not by gossip, but by the very laws that govern balance, truth, and justice. Now that energy is coming back to be repaid, and the interest is high. Things are collapsing not because someone cursed them, but because the divine doesn't allow sacred things to be exploited without consequence. Their peace is disturbed, their luck is drying up, their relationships feel empty. They keep trying to fill themselves through external means, but nothing works because the source they tried to steal from you has been cut off, and worse, exposed. They underestimated you because you didn't fight dirty, because you loved purely. But they never saw that this love was sacred, that it carried generational power, that it was connected to something greater than them. And now, they are discovering what happens when someone takes from the divine without permission. It wasn't vengeance, it wasn't bitterness. It was balance. And now, the spiritual system they thought was invisible is reclaiming every stolen drop. Number 13. They didn't just lose you. They lost access to a realm they can never enter again. They didn't just lose your presence. They lost access to a spiritual dimension that only you could offer them. What they never realized is that you weren't just offering a connection. You were offering an elevation. Peace followed you because it lived in you. Opportunities opened around you because your energy aligned with higher realms. You didn't just enter their life. You brought favor, alignment, clarity, and acceleration. And instead of respecting that, they took it for granted. Worse, they took you for ordinary. While they were busy manipulating the connection, they missed the miracle standing right in front of them. You weren't just there to comfort them. You were the bridge between the life they were stuck in and the version of themselves they were called to become. And that bridge wasn't given cheaply. It came with a spiritual responsibility, but they treated your presence as if it were replaceable, as if it were luck, as if it were something they stumbled upon, not something they were granted. Now that you're gone, the shift is undeniable. The peace is gone, the ease has vanished, the open doors have closed, and they are starting to realize that the glow they once felt wasn't theirs. It was borrowed. They were basking in your light, benefiting from your alignment, accessing rooms they had no key for because you were the access point. You were the reason things flowed. And now that you've withdrawn, that realm is sealed. No matter how many affirmations they recite or how many people they try to substitute for you, the vibration won't respond. Because the door was never opened by their charm. It opened because of your frequency, and now that frequency no longer recognizes them. Not because you're bitter, but because spiritual doors respond to energy, not excuses. They didn't just lose you. They lost the divine connection you carried, the favor that moved when you prayed, the clarity that came when you listened, the protection that followed you into every space. And that kind of access doesn't reopen once it's been disrespected, not in the same way, not for the same person. They thought they were walking away from a person, but what they truly left was the rarest of portals, a human gateway to realms they will never touch again. Number 14. Your restraint wasn't weakness. It was the final mercy they will ever receive. They mistook your silence for surrender. They thought that because you didn't react, expose them or fight back, they had outsmarted you. But what they never understood is that your restraint wasn't fear. It was power. It wasn't you being passive. It was the universe holding its breath. Your silence wasn't permission. It was their last chance to make things right before something far greater than you intervened. You knew what they had done. You saw the manipulation, felt the betrayal, carried the weight of their lies, and yet you didn't retaliate. Not because you couldn't, but because you knew some things were above your pay grade. You remained silent not out of weakness. You remained silent because mercy was still possible. The divine was still waiting for them to take responsibility. But they took that delay and treated it as a victory. They celebrated a war that wasn't over, mistaking your peace for defeat. They didn't know that your restraint was actually their final layer of protection. Because once that divine delay expires, it doesn't rain, it floods, and now that time is up. What's coming for them isn't vengeance, it's balance. And balance has no favorites. It doesn't care who cried the loudest or who played the victim best. It only cares about truth. And the truth is what they did, how they did it, and the pride they carried while doing it has reached its spiritual expiration date. Now the consequences that were once withheld are being released, and nothing can stop them. Not denial, not manipulation, not charm. They had the chance to repent in private, to acknowledge the damage, to own their part. But they chose to act as if nothing happened. As if you were exaggerating, as if their version of the story was more valid than the pain you carried. That pride sealed their fate, and now the silence they once mocked is turning into a judgment they cannot escape. Not because you wished it, but because divine law always acts eventually. Your silence wasn't a loss, it was grace. And now that grace has flown away, they thought they had gotten away with it. But what they really received was time, and they wasted it. Now, the correction begins, and no one is coming to stop it. The greatest mistake one can make is to mistake divine restraint for absence. They thought that because nothing happened immediately, nothing would ever happen. They thought your silence was submission, your grace was weakness, and your departure was insignificant. But what they didn't see is that you were never just a person in their life. You were a divine checkpoint, a sacred mirror, a final test. And now that you've withdrawn, the spiritual system they mocked is settling accounts. Every tactic they used to hurt, manipulate, or humiliate you is now coming back to them. Not out of vengeance, but because balance cannot be denied. The energy they buried, twisted, and distorted is resurfacing. And this time, it has a price no ego can pay. They didn't just lose your presence. They lost access to a divine current that flowed through you, a frequency they mistook for luck, charm, or coincidence. What they are facing now is what happens when grace is wasted, when sacred energy is exploited, and when a spiritual test is failed with full arrogance. You were their warning before the collapse, their buoy before the fall. And now the door is sealed, the system has moved on. And what they are left with is the full weight of their own choices. Choices that seemed powerful once, but now feel like quicksand. So don't mourn your silence, don't question your distance, and don't regret your kindness. You did your part. You showed up as a light in someone's life who chose shadows. And though they made you out to be their enemy, all you were was a final invitation to evolve. Now the invitation has expired, and the consequences, they are only just beginning. If this message resonated with your spirit, if it confirmed what you already knew in your soul, then don't keep it to yourself. Go ahead, like this video, leave a comment below, and share it with someone who needs to hear the truth spoken aloud. You never know who is fighting a spiritual war in silence and waiting for confirmation. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another message like this. This isn't just content, it's clarity. And we're building a tribe that sees beyond the surface. Thank you for being here.